Welcome back, everyone, to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Monday, March 3rd edition of the show. And more notably, Jake, it is a pre-trade deadline edition. In 4 days now, this Friday, there will be a trade deadline. Are you prepared? Are you ready? Are you excited?
I think I'm ready. Is it weird that I feel like this is the least excited I've been for trade deadline for the Ducks in a minute? I think that this is just a weird deadline overall, where it feels like the Ducks are not going to be sellers. There's not going to be outside of maybe like one or two moves, and this could be something that is an old takes exposed for me come Friday. But it feels like there's probably not going to be a whole lot of action for them. And so it seems like in years past they were, okay, when is this guy going to get moved? What's the return going to be? Think about what maybe they could do. Maybe they're going to move a Vetrano last year. Maybe 2 years ago they were going to move a Henrique. What would they get for Klingberg? 3 years ago, the Lindholm, Raquel. Like there was just a whole lot of like question marks around what the returns would be for these guys. Whereas this year it kind of feels like, I don't know if it's not a foregone conclusion who's going to move, but it just, I don't really care too much about the returns because at this point in time, the guys that I want to see being moved are more so being moved for opening up roster spots than it is wanting a return for the long-term future of this team. And the Ducks also aren't in this position where they should be buying rental players, which are mainly which are what are moved primarily or who are moved primarily on deadline day. So this feels like it might be one of the quieter deadlines for the Ducks in the last couple of years and has led from my excitement from the Ducks perspective to be a little bit lower. But we'll get into potentially the moves that we will see later.
Yeah, I just think that this is kind of a low importance deadline because if you just look at the obvious moves, we'll talk about them later, but there's not a lot to be gained there. I think my fascination is just going to be, are there going to be any kind of off the beaten path trades? Because I feel like that is a possibility. Is something that we just don't expect at all to happen. So I am not excited per se, but I'm very intrigued. I have this feeling, which I tweeted about earlier today. I have a feeling about what could happen, and I'm curious to see it play out. That's all.
You're saying that was a feeling and that wasn't you reporting a fact?
I mean, well, what did I say? Something like I wouldn't be surprised if, like, that's talking about me, I'm pretty sure, not someone else, but you know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Let's move on though. Let's talk about this last week of Ducks hockey, and I'm going to start with this.
Okay.
Standings update. Nothing has changed since last week. The Ducks are still 6 points out of the playoff spot. They have a game in hand on the Calgary Flames. They have a game in hand on the Vancouver Canucks. And yet, despite the fact that nothing has changed, I feel like the Ducks are in a worse position than they were. Agree or disagree?
Agreed.
And the main reason for that, and we're going to talk about the games here, and I'm going to start with the most recent. I'm going to get this out of the way. We're going to give you all your medicine first, and then we'll touch on some good. But we'll get the medicine out of the way. So open wide, it'll be okay. Ducks had a game on Saturday night at Honda Center, at home, against the Chicago Blackhawks. The Chicago Blackhawks that just dumped off Seth Jones because he didn't want to be there, wanted to play for a good team. A Chicago Blackhawks team that is bad, that is just by all measures not a good team. And this was a game where if the Ducks had won, they could have given themselves a huge favor in climbing up the standings, especially with all the teams around them losing. And instead of what happens, maybe one of the worst performances of the season that I can remember. They lose 6-3 against the Blackhawks. They lay an egg. They made countless mistakes. They played undisciplined hockey. They took penalties. And it just felt like, again, this is maybe me putting too much emphasis on one game, but in a game where it's kind of made to order to climb up and to show me who you are, to show me that there is a truly separation between you and the bad teams, that this is a game where you can climb and elevate and move forward, to come up that flat is kind of telling for me.
Yeah, I agree completely because, I mean, here's the thing, is that one of the things with the Ducks here is that they wanted to get into the situation, or Verbeek wanted this team to be in the situation so they could play the meaningful games. The thing is, the meaningful games in March are not just the games against the Vancouver Canucks. They're not just the games against the Edmonton Oilers. They're not just the games against teams in the race when you're playing the Calgary Flames. They are also these games against teams that you should beat, and getting up for those games and playing well and out just straight up just leaving no doubt and dominating those teams. And that's just not what we saw in this game at all. And what we ended up seeing was more so, at least purely looking at the play in 5-on-5 and removing the score, these were two teams that were fairly equal overall. Yep. Like, removing the scoreline, like, I don't think either team really separated themselves from each other, which makes sense if you look at the overall season numbers for these two teams. The Ducks are currently 31st in the league in expected goal share, and the Blackhawks are 30th. Like, they are both at 43% in expected goal share. And so these are two teams that kind of look like they were in the same vein throughout that game. And I think while I could sit here and say, well, this is just who the Ducks are. Like, they are this bad. Like, they have been this bad this year. Everything kind of that I have said prior to this. But the thing is, if they want to show that they are turning this corner, that like we had in that debate episode, that they are making strides and that they are improving as the season's going on, and we'll get to the Vancouver game and using that in a bit, but using that Vancouver game as a springboard, because I think they actually played well in that game, you have to dominate this Blackhawks team. Like, you just do. This cannot be a game where you are even tight going into the third period. This is one where not only do you have to dominate on the scoreboard, but you need to dominate with the way that you play. And that was just not what the Ducks did. They maybe had a good first 5 minutes, but then they allowed too many chances going the other way. They weren't really able to generate much offense. And I think largely throughout this game, kind of what I ended up seeing throughout from this game from the Ducks in comparison to maybe the game against the Canucks, is that it felt like because they were not able to get a whole lot of rush opportunities against the Blackhawks for various different reasons, they weren't really able to generate much from a high offensive look perspective. That when this team ends up playing a team that maybe sits back a little bit more defensively and tries to really make it so odd man rushes aren't going the other way and forces maybe the Ducks to rely on in-zone offense, they struggle at times to really generate from those positions and creating offense in those spots. And that, to me, is what we saw. The Ducks weren't able to get high-quality looks. And then they were also very heavily turnover-prone to the Blackhawks and allowed some really high danger looks from the Blackhawks. And so this was just a game that wasn't good enough. Sure, the Ducks had their looks. Sure, it probably should have been a tighter score than a 6-3 final, but that's just not good enough if you're a team that is trying to be in the playoff hunt right now.
Yeah, and the bar was not even that high for this game. I don't even think through 40 minutes they were playing very poorly and they were doing themselves no favors. And yet they were down 3-2. They go down 3-1. They kind of have this nice little stretch where Jackson LaCombe scores and they kind of control the last 5 to 7 minutes of the second period. And I was like, you know what? Just put together a strong 20 minutes in the third period and you will win, and I will kind of forgive, because that's just all you need. Just find a way, get it done. And instead they went in the other direction, where they then give up 3 unanswered goals in the third period, all on just bad mistakes. People were blaming John Gibson for this game. I don't think that should be the case at all. It was just really poor play in front of him. Leo Carlsson ends up scoring when the game is already out of reach. But again, all I wanted to see was, okay, game is within reach. You're down a goal, third period. Just put one period together. And they couldn't even do that. And so when you talk about being in the mix, I mean, these are the games you have to have. These are the games where you have to show up, and they didn't. So that's, I don't know. It's just very disconcerting, because there is an element of, which is kind of what Greg Cronin and Radko Gudas said in their comments after the game, of, oh, well, it's a bad game. It's a bad game within a good sequence, which is true, like, on its face. The Ducks have been winning a lot of games.
We'll get to that.
This is a bad loss. But at the same time, they're not in a position where they can just have a bad loss. Like, the only reason that they're even in this conversation is because they've won all those games. These are the games that now you have to go and get for yourself. And I think it's just very telling that they came up so short in that game.
Well, and not only that, also from the perspective of, this is a team that if they are truly trying to get into this playoff race, they need to go like 700 down the stretch.
They need to play very well.
And I mean, might as well just do it now. Let's talk about the Vancouver game and then we'll do this. But this is a team that's 500 in the 5 games post Four Nations. Like,
Well,
that's
what Greg Cronin literally labeled the team as. We're a 500 team after that game. So
and so like, if they want to get in this race like they're talking about, like that's just not who they are right now. And kind of maybe the narratives around the team needs to change a little bit, but this team needed to win this game and win it convincingly to be able to essentially make me think that they could get into this thing. And right now, this was a bit of a letdown for me.
Well, the good news is that they are in the exact same position that they were. They still have a game in hand. So, like, they still have their 9 lives, basically.
Correct.
It's just you're running out of runway.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for them is that Vancouver, like, basically everyone that needed to lose that was out in the upper portion of that wild card race lost, both on, what would that have been, on Saturday night and on Sunday night, with the Flames losing. Yeah, and Vancouver losing. The Blues lost yesterday, but I mean, there's just a lot of teams in front of the Ducks, and that's kind of the tough part with where they're at right now. Is there's a lot of teams ahead of them in the point race, and so they need to get these games. But that was the Chicago game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, is that as nice as it is that they're in this mix, it's not in their control fully, and the things that they do control, which we saw in that Chicago game, they didn't do a good job of.
I guess. To wrap up the Chicago game, I guess one thing to point out, Leo Carlsson, I thought had a good game overall.
Yeah, he did.
2 goals. Yeah. 2 goals in that game I thought looked really impactful. So just wanted to mention
Jackson
that.
LaCombe.
Yes. I mean, Jackson LaCombe every game.
I feel like we just haven't even talked about him enough. But we'll get to him. So I think what made that Chicago game all the more disappointing is that the Ducks actually had a really good game prior to that against the Canucks.
Yes.
And I think that what was really good about that Canucks game is that that's a team that you're fighting with for a playoff spot. Like, that is a direct competitor. That is a solid team. Sure, they've been disappointing this year, but that's a challenging game for the Ducks. That is the definition of a meaningful game. And I thought that they delivered in that game. They delivered one of their best performances of the season. They were really sound, just all over the ice. They really took it to the Canucks, and that's what makes the Chicago game all the more head scratching.
Yeah, and I think the Vancouver game, I think comparing the two is interesting because I had mentioned in the Chicago game that they really were not able to get on the rush at all, and they were really trying to generate offense from the cycle, which, to be fair, like, is what Greg Cronin wants. Like, he has mentioned that even in his quotes that we are a rush team, but essentially he does not want them to be a rush team. That if you look at the goals they score, they're on the rush a lot of the times, but he wants them to generate more from the cycle, more from possession, have the puck more in the offensive zone from that. But that's just kind of not who this team is. And this Vancouver game kind of showed that, with a lot of the goals coming off rush plays, off zone entries, not off dumped pucks in, off clean zone entries, plays with the puck. I didn't think of like the Ryan Strome goal in the second period where the puck ends up getting moved to him in the slot and he ends up scoring it. Cutter Gauthier coming down the wing and scoring off a zone entry in a rush. Maybe that's one where Shelovs might want back, but still, like, that's a situation where that happens. I mean, I think the Frank Vetrano goal, that may have been a zone set play in the offense.
That was a bit more of a cycle play. But
yeah,
did you already mention the LaCombe goal?
I did not.
Okay, that is a rush goal.
Yeah, 4-on-4 offensive zone. So, to me, this is a situation where you look at that game and you look at how they scored, and while I think that you can definitely see a team here that is playing well, and I think you can see a roadmap to success for this team. I think my just one question is that coming out of this game is that if this is their roadmap to success, then why aren't they doing that more? Or why is the coaching staff, I guess the better way to put it, identifying that this is the roadmap to success for them to make this for them? Because I thought that was really, really impressive how they generated. And then I think another thing worth mentioning, and this would be actually a plus for Cronin, is that I actually think they defended very well in that third period.
Yep.
I think that was probably the best defensive third period they had, from the perspective of maybe they sat back and turtled a little bit.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen from a score effects perspective. And if you're able to do that, but also not allow many shots against, then it's fine. Like, I think Vancouver, shots on goal are maybe 2-7, with the Ducks having 7 and Vancouver having 2, even though the Ducks were sitting back a bit. Like, I think that the way that they defended was really, really, they defended the blue line well. They forced Vancouver to give up the puck, and then they were able to turn the puck over in the defensive zone. Like, I think that that was probably one of their strongest third periods that they've had in a tight game, where it wasn't a turtle and allow the other team to just hold the puck in the offensive zone. It was winning puck battles back.
Yeah, and looking at those rush goals too, what's encouraging is that a lot of those sequences start with plays in the defensive zone where they turn a puck over and then they quickly go the other way. Like that's what this team can be at its best, because the way that they play in the defensive zone, they are very aggressive. And so when they can get those turnovers, like you saw on the 4-on-4 goal, like they can immediately turn it into offense. And when they're on the rush, they have the horses to burn you. Like look at the Cutter Gauthier goal. We've seen him score from that location before. That seems to be a repeatable skill for him. And then you look at the two other rush goals. On the Strome goal, you have a really nice feed for Mason McTavish.
Yep.
And then on the LaCombe goal, another really nice feed from Mason McTavish. And then an even better move from LaCombe to chip it to himself into the middle of the ice and finish it off. Like, the Ducks have high skill players. They have it's kind of crazy to say about a team that has a minus, what's their goal differential?
Like
minus 30,
26 something.
minus 29 and struggling to be in the playoffs, but this is a skilled team.
Yeah.
This is a team that can really hurt the opposition when they get out and transition this way. And Greg Cronin has talked about, we need to have a ground game, like using the football analogy of like you need to be able to run the ball. And sure, to a degree, every team needs that. And I think that part of where he's coming from there is that in the playoffs, you can't just be a rush team. And that's true. Here's the thing, though. You got to get in the playoffs. You got to get into the playoffs first. And if this is a big aspect of your team's strengths, I just think that they've left a lot of money on the table this season by not leading into this more, of being more of a run and gun team. Like, I think run and gun is kind of a stigmatized term, but the Ducks have the legs and the talent to
And the
get away.
goaltending.
Yeah, and the goaltending to get away with it. So anyway, that Canucks game was very encouraging. It was a very positive game.
Like, I think if the Ducks want to get into this race, this is the type of game that they need to play. They can't be playing games where, and granted, I'll say this, part of this I think is just who they're playing. Like, some of it is on the Ducks, some of it is on who they're playing. Like, I think Chicago was very much more limiting rush chances against by keeping guys back a bit.
Yeah, but Chicago's not stopping anybody this season, though.
Fair.
Like, let's be honest about who they are.
Yeah, like, and so it's a mixture of things. I think it can be both on the opponent, but also on the Ducks with an asserted effort to enter the zone with possession and make plays with the puck instead of just trying. Like, I do think at its core, the Ducks system and what Greg Cronin wants is to get the puck either in the offensive zone or from the neutral zone and get the puck deep, get the puck back, and move the puck from low to high for a point shot. Like, I think that in reality is kind of what Greg Cronin wants from this system. And in reality, with the amount of skill that this team has, they should enter the zone with the puck and then make a play with it for a trailer. I mean, not the Mason McTavish goal. The Ryan Strome goal is a perfect example of that, of Mason McTavish having the puck in the offensive zone, finding a trailing Ryan Strome who's open and hitting him in stride with that pass.
Yeah, and I think that against Chicago, it's kind of interesting because I think against Chicago, a lot of their big mistakes were actually moments where they maybe should have just made the safe play. Like, you think of the Hellison turnover at the blue line against Chicago. He's trying to enter their zone, and instead of just chipping in the puck deep, he forces a play and it turns into a rush the other way. So there is a balance. Like, you can't just be a run and gun team. You also can't just be a dump and chase team.
Sure.
The Ducks are trying to find that balance, but I think the balance has to be more skewed towards being aggressive. And against Chicago, like, it just really felt like I don't know honestly, I can't even pinpoint one thing against Chicago. It just felt like just a parade of errors that just kept happening, and like unforced errors too. Like, I really, truly don't think Chicago did anything that really took the Ducks out of their game. The Ducks just laid an egg. It happens.
Yep.
So a weird week of hockey.
Yep, definitely. And then, we also didn't talk about it on the last episode, but very briefly, Ducks lost to the Buffalo Sabres in a game that was also a fairly poor performance overall. Where
that was one of the worst losses of the season, and somehow it was one up just 2 games later.
Yeah, like, did not play a good first period, played an okay second, and played just an awful third.
That third period was one of the worst periods I've seen this team play.
That was definitely a worse period than the. I think when you put into context the team that they are playing, like the Sabres are not a good team. They are better than the Blackhawks.
They have a lot more skill. Yeah.
So in the context of that, I think that is a worse game because of how dominated the Ducks were. I think the Ducks played a more even game against the Blackhawks than they did against the Sabres, but the Blackhawks are worse than the Sabres.
Yeah. That's the thing is that, just to touch on the Hawks thing one more time, is that if you look at the stats from that game, the 5-on-5 stats are kind of close. And it's like, oh, well, they didn't play that bad. It's like, yeah, but that's not where the bar should be. The Hawks are bad. It shouldn't be close. Yes, the Sabres are a lot more skilled than the Hawks. They are not a good team either. They are last in the Eastern Conference. I think that what was troubling with that game is that they had an opportunity to go and win the game. I mean, they were up 3-0 going into the third period, 2-0, and they just stopped playing. They get completely dominated for 20 minutes straight. And sure, maybe it was the 3 games in 4 nights, whatever, but you just can't be that bad and expect to win.
Also, I don't really like that excuse because they were just coming off 2 weeks off.
They just had 10 days off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I guess before we kind of move on to the deadline, but to circle back to the 5 games post 4 Nations, the Ducks have an overtime win against the Boston Bruins, an overtime loss against the Detroit Red Wings, a loss to the Buffalo Sabres, a win against the Vancouver Canucks, and a loss against the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's just do this real quick. From your own perspective, deserve to win or not deserve to win? Boston Bruins.
They deserve to win.
Okay, I would agree. Detroit.
That game's a bit of a toss-up game.
I think that they probably should have lost that game. They were down 2 goals, didn't generate much offense until having the goalie
It was just
pulled.
a weird game.
Yeah, but 2 goals with an empty net with the goalie pulled. I think that realistically, the Ducks were very fortunate, I think, to pull a point out of that one. Buffalo.
They deserve to lose. They got exactly what they deserved in that game.
Vancouver.
They played great. They deserve to win.
And Chicago.
They deserve to lose.
So realistically, this is a team that in the 5 games post 4 Nations are, in my estimation, should have probably gone 2-3. Maybe 2-1 is about the right call for them. But looking at the teams that they were playing, maybe the Boston Bruins are the only team, if you're looking at some of the numbers that are good from a 5-on-5 perspective. I think that this is a stretch where the Ducks needed to pull out more.
Well, that's the thing is that none of these teams have been great this season. And so this was a really nice runway to elevate yourself. And quite honestly, it's funny how Greg Cronin's comment of we're a 500 team kind of rings true because that's kind of what they felt like in the stretch, right? They just they look great one night, they look terrible another night. They're a team that's just hasn't figured it out yet. They haven't hit.
I'd agree.
They haven't hit any sort of consistency. I think that it's nice to see some of the highs, but the lows, especially given now that they're in a race, the lows feel so much more crushing than they used to.
Yeah, well, I think these next 10 games are going to be absolutely telling, and you may be saying no shit, Sherlock. They're getting closer to the end, so it's obviously going to be telling. But you look at the teams that they're playing. I'm just saying in a general not you specifically.
Yeah.
But here are the teams that they're playing over the next 10 games. They're playing at Edmonton tomorrow, at Vancouver on Wednesday, then at home versus St. Louis, at home versus the Islanders, at home versus the Capitals, at Utah, at home versus Nashville, at St. Louis, at Dallas, at Nashville, and at home versus Carolina. That may have been 11, not 10, but regardless.
Yeah,
it's a tough stretch.
Well, it's interesting though because Edmonton has not been playing well.
No, they have not.
So Edmonton is potentially a game you can go steal. I'm not holding my breath on that, but potentially. Vancouver is also having problems, and Vancouver cannot hang on to a playoff spot right now. They are currently out of it. Is it weird to say that the hardest game this week might be the Blues on Friday?
I don't. I think yes,
the Blues are hot right now.
They are. Yes, the Oilers are struggling, but the Oilers is still the tough. Like that's the toughest game.
The Ducks have weirdly done well against the Oilers this season, though.
Yeah,
That has not been a problematic matchup for them.
but I guess looking at this next 10-game stretch, like, yes, the Predators record-wise have not been good, but they're playing some decent hockey right now overall if you look at the way that they're playing. I'd say maybe the Islanders are the only kind of very soft matchup in this group.
The thing is, I don't know what the Predators are going to look like after
That's also
the
a
trade
fair
deadline.
point. Fair point.
Like their roster is probably going to be worse than it is right
True.
now.
True.
But it's not like there's no easy game in there. I mean, the Islanders are a better team than the Ducks. So, I mean, hell, if you suck that bad against the Blackhawks, then you don't deserve to be given the benefit of the doubt in any game except maybe the Sharks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this next stretch of games is going to be tough. And we'll find out. Again, maybe they're going to come out of that Blackhawks game and feel a little embarrassed. Greg Cronin straight up said that they took the Blackhawks too lightly, which I thought was very interesting. And now they get an opportunity to make it right. Go get some wins that we didn't expect against some tough competition. I mean, the Canucks haven't been playing well, but the Canucks are hungry. They want to make the playoffs, as are the Blues. And then you've got, I mean, hell, then you've got the Islanders, and then you've got the Caps in Utah. Like, it's
a tough stretch.
This is where you sink or swim. This could really sink them, or it could show us something about them. Like, I think if they come out of this stretch with a close to winning record, I think you have to feel somewhat good about this team because this is strong competition.
Yep. And also, if you want to feel good about yourself, you should check out our sponsor, Alpha Progression. They are a no BS training app for muscle growth. Alpha Progression is the go-to app for anyone training to maximize muscle gain. They're focused 100% on that, and it's science-based and developed by serious lifters with personal training and competitive bodybuilding backgrounds. Alpha Progression has been recognized twice as App of the Day by Apple, and they are by far the top-rated fitness app in Germany. Have recently started expanding their reach to users worldwide, and they have one of the most intuitive workout logger. Their users love, and also me because using the app, love the UI and constantly tell them how easy it is to use, even though it's packed with features, making it the ideal tool for both novices and seasoned lifters. And they give you plan generators. Their plans are generated from scratch and according to users' needs, like what muscles they want to focus on and what equipment they have. And so whether you are someone like me that has a little bit of a home gym in your garage, you can input everything that you have. Or if you're going to a more commercial gym that has everything, you can just select everything. You also can pick strength training, trying to lose weight, various different options, and it will generate a different workout plan for you. And there are over 1,000 trillion input combinations. And quality-wise, their plans measure up to the best personal trainers in the world. They had a coach who charges $500 a month tell them that their app follows exactly the same principles that they have. And their strength training is all about progression. And their algorithm analyzes your past performances and gives a recommendation for weight and reps in every set. It's extremely, extremely helpful for whether you're an experienced weightlifter or someone that's just trying to get going. Having knowledge of exactly what you had done in the past so that you can have progressive overload is really, really important, and it can guarantee long-term success. So the pro version of the app is $12.99 per month, or $79.99 per year with a 2-week free trial. And customers can get 20% off their first payment using the link alphaprogression.com/CTP. You can once again get 20% off your first payment using the link alphaprogression.com/CTP.
So, we need to talk about the trade deadline, but before we do that, I'm going to spend some time here handing out flowers.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Is positivity allowed?
Let's do it. As Skadoosh in our YouTube chat is saying, that was a lot of medicine to swallow, and he's in drug-induced coma now for the second half of the show.
But you know, medicine makes you healthier. It relieves symptoms.
Yeah.
So medicine is good.
Let's give out flowers.
But I will get. I think that we've done it, but I think we're not. I don't think we're reacting adequately.
Okay.
Jackson LaCombe, like, by every measure, Jackson LaCombe is turning into a legitimate top 4 defenseman, potentially top pairing defenseman this season. If you look at the tracking data, if you look at the on-ice data, just the shot attempt differential, goal differential, if you look at points, he is just crushing it across the board. The Ducks have potentially plucked a top pairing defenseman out of the second round in 2019. Like that is insane. The fact, like, we spend so much time on this show talking about Minchikov and Zellweger and Luneau, and rightfully so. Those guys all have great potential. But Jackson LaCombe is doing it. He is doing the thing that we hope that those guys one day do. And I think that we just need to recognize that. We need to, like, he's got 11 goals, he's got 30 points. This is a breakout season of all time.
Yeah. Like, he's playing fantastic. And he's able to really do a lot of things with coming up into the rush. And that's, I think, one of the things that has stood out so much is his willingness to get into the offensive zone, get into some dangerous locations to be able to create offense. I mean, think about how many goals it feels like he's scored from the slot or gone up and scored off a rebound. Like, areas where we haven't typically seen Ducks defensemen. And he's been given the leash to be able to do that. And that's something that I think, while we are critical of the coaching staff for a lot of different things, and we'll get there also probably later, they deserve credit for letting Jackson LaCombe flourish and not punishing him for maybe some of the turnovers that he's having. And it's turning into the season that he's having right now.
Yeah, let LaCombe cook.
Yeah.
LLCC.
What do you think? He's RFA this summer, isn't he? It's been a while since I looked.
He's got 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the Ducks extend him this summer?
I was asked that on the last live stream as I was by my lonesome, but
sorry,
I was I was asked, what would you give him right now? So I'll ask you that question since you were not there. What would you, once he's eligible this summer, what would you be willing to sign him for right now?
It's tough.
It is
my gut
tough
tells
because I would rather see one more season of this before moving.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I guess, my thing here is that regardless of everything that we said, right? This isn't just him producing without underlying metrics. Like, the underlying numbers are there.
Yep.
But we have seen guys have really good seasons and then fall off a bit. And so I think I would be cautious to lock him up with a long-term extension until getting a little bit of more information at the beginning of next year. That's not to say that this is not who he is. Like, that's not me saying that he's not this player that we're seeing this year. But that's just me saying, if I'm going to give him an 8-year contract extension, I want to see a bit more than just one season like this from him.
I mean, I think you could argue that that's why you do it now.
That's
Because
also fair.
You can show him a pot of money, and hopefully he takes it, and then he does this again, or maybe he comes up a little short, and he's on a team-friendly deal, because he's going to be a UFA in 2028. So he's...
Fair, yeah.
Yeah. So just show him the money right now. I mean, go like 6 years, $6 million, something like that. Yeah. And like it probably ages fine even if he takes a step back from what he is this season. Because the thing is, the longer you wait, if he has another season like this, then that number's going up. It's no longer 6x6 or whatever. And it's going to be harder to buy those UFA years. Like the clock is kind of ticking to lock him up long term.
I mean, because he played what, 3 years of, was it
It might have been 4. I think it was 4, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. But played a long time in college, where he is not in the same situation as others coming off his ELC with time until he hits UFA. Like, this is...
Yeah, he played 4 years. So.
Like, this is not going to be a bridge deal. So, like,
I don't
from that perspective...
Yeah.
Like, if he gets a bridge deal, he's walked to UFA status, basically.
Yeah,
you can't. 2 years would walk him to UFA status. 1 year.
You can't bridge him. I think you have to go long with him, and I think it's a smart play. Like we keep talking about how the Ducks dropped the ball with Zegras and the bridge contract. I think that this is your opportunity to make it right. Like, you can have a potentially really team friendly deal. I think if you're Jackson LaCombe, the hard part will be, what do you do? Because you're going to be shown a pot of money. But if you have another great season, rising cap, like, you could command a much bigger payday. So I feel like it just won't get done this summer because of that. I think that they're just going to punt.
I think it might be more of a LaCombe call. I mean,
I think so too. Yeah.
it's one of two things with LaCombe. It's either you want to cash in on the great season you had, and hockey's a tough sport. You can get injured. That's all that type of stuff.
You could be set for life.
And tank some things there. But also, if you're him, like, you could also want to bet on yourself. And it's not as if you're taking a bet on yourself with a 1-year deal. You're just wanting to give yourself a little bit more time to prove that that is who you are, to get more money.
Yeah, because once his current deal expires, he has 2 years and then he's a UFA, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would be going long with him and just hoping it works out. Like, but I think it will. Here's my question.
Yeah.
If this was a player with higher draft cachet, are we even hesitating? Like, is that part of it? Is that we didn't think that this is what he was going to be, and so now
Maybe.
we're a little more hesitant? Like, I think if Pavel Mintyukov does this at age 24, you roll out the red carpet, right? So, something to think about.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But he's been great. He deserves flowers, and hopefully he gets those in the mail from us. All right. Up next, trade deadline.
Yes.
Trade deadline is Friday. We've talked about it a bunch. Where do you want to go with this? I know that you really want to talk about Elliot Friedman's very insightful comments.
Oh, so insightful. I think it's
Thoughts.
I think it's worth mentioning. So here's kind of what was laid out on the 32 Thoughts pod. This is me summarizing here. There may be some things I'm missing here, but this is for the most part the things that kind of stuck out to me. Basically, Elliot is of the mind that the Ducks are probably going to be big game hunting, whether it is now, whether it is in summer. Unclear exactly where, when the Ducks will be big game hunting, but that seems like something he expects the Ducks to do. So that's something to keep an eye on. We talked about maybe having a big swing.
We talked about Rantanen.
Yeah,
for the Ducks.
exactly. But so that's a bit of an out there thing. But in terms of who the Ducks have on this team, John Gibson, he kind of more or less said that the Ducks have asked a lot for John Gibson, and teams currently have not really been willing to pay that amount. And there's also just the question mark on Gibson's health, like the fact that he comes in and plays in Boston and gets hurt in that game. Teams really were questioning wanting to give up as much as the Ducks are asking for if this is a guy that cannot stay healthy. So there.
What do you think they're asking for Gibson?
I don't know. I mean,
Like,
if it's a
high
lot,
price?
I feel like a high price means that you're getting some sort of like you're getting a player back
first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or some sort of roster player back. Like yeah. But or if the Ducks are retaining, you're adding a first to that. But and then on the blue line specifically, he had mentioned that it's been hard on both Zellweger and Mintyukov not playing every night. That's kind of what
most
Elliot
nights for Zellweger.
Yeah, that it's been something that's going back and forth, and it's not been easy for either of them. But basically, he doesn't think Verbeek is very sympathetic to either of them in this situation, that they need to go out and earn their spots on the roster, and it should be hard to be able to get a spot on the NHL roster. But he's also recognized that those kids do have to play, and that neither of them are AHLers right now, and them sitting on the bench every other game is just not useful, which is what you and I have been saying on this podcast for what?
Yeah.
4 months?
We said that months ago, and you know how many people came up with different reasons for why we were wrong on Twitter of like, oh, well, anyway.
They'll still play 50 games.
It's just,
So basically Elliot said that then leads to Brian Dumoulin. The Ducks and Dumoulin have talked a little bit about an extension, but Elliot's not sure how far that has gone. He would be attractive to teams and would likely clear up the logjam. So probably should be a no-brainer, but this is now me adding my own opinion. We'll see where that ends up going. And then up front, Elliot thinks Verbeek will try to get the big forward, but the big question for the Ducks is honestly about Trevor Zegras. A lot of people think that Zegras has worked hard to do exactly what the Ducks have asked of him, but he said that basically there's still a question about just kind of where his future lies. And to me, that kind of makes it seem it's not really certain if he's going to get traded or not. And the Ducks and Verbeek are notoriously tight-lipped, so we just don't have any idea. His name is out there, but it's unclear how not true, but how much it is likely that he is going to be moved. And then the only other piece of information that Elliot brought up was that kind of there is this thing with Friedman, this thing with Verbeek of him being a hardline negotiator, but one of the big criticisms of him has been not leveraging situations enough. And he specifically brought up Jacob Trouba and how there are people around the league that think that Verbeek should have gotten more back for taking on the full cap hit of Jacob Trouba.
Are we people around the league? Do we count as that?
This is exactly what we said. And then also specifically brought up Ville Husso and how even though that the Ducks had that situation due to injuries and that it was a unique situation due to that Detroit really wanted to get out of that money, that they did not want to pay the $1 million in salary, and Verbeek basically took that on for nothing. And that is not leveraging that situation to get an asset back. And so that was a bit of music to my ears because I think you and I have gotten a bit of flack from people out there for being critical of that. And it seems like that is something that other people throughout the league have been critical of Verbeek for.
Yep. So I'll start with some of the more obvious notes here. So let's start with Brian Dumoulin. Brian Dumoulin is an obvious trade candidate. I think it is interesting that they have talked about an extension because that at least shows that that's a potential outcome. Mm-hmm. Here's my kind of problem with this Dumoulin situation. Where can he go? There are not many teams that can either afford him or that he makes sense for at this point. Like, I am very curious. He might just end up staying because there are no dance partners. That's kind of where I've landed on this Dumoulin situation. Like, if you were to pin a team right now of this makes obvious sense, this is a clean situation cap wise, who would that be?
I think the Jets have cap space, don't? Yeah, the Jets have 2.7 in cap space.
Yes, but then you run into the trouble of would he accept a trade there?
Yep.
And so
I mean, the thing is,
maybe he does because
they're the number one team in the league.
They're the best team in the league, so maybe that's enough for him, and I think it probably would be given what we know about his desires. But I think I would just say it's not a foregone conclusion that he's gone, just because of the way that this trade market is shaking out.
Detroit?
Maybe. Is Detroit really in that different of a position? I mean, I guess they're in a playoff spot, but
yeah, and they have 2.9 mil in cap space.
Wonder how they got that cap space.
Yeah, is the future consideration Brian
maybe
Dumoulin?
Oh my God, maybe maybe the Ducks get an extra pick in the Dumoulin trade from Detroit. Oh my God, that would be. Talk about taking the most circuitous route possible.
The Ducks took on Ville Husso now so that Detroit could accrue cap space.
I mean, that would be crazy work. That would, like, you know that expression, crazy work? Like, this would actually be that.
This is us doing the Charlie Day meme.
Yes.
Pointing at the board, putting together all the stuff. But no, that's not like it. But Detroit could be an option for them. Like I think there are more options than you're leading on. It might be less than everyone thinks. With him
there's
being
also
a defenseman.
other defensemen out there.
Yes,
like, that's the thing. It's a game of musical chairs.
But
and his cap hit is not negligible either.
Sure, but I think from the perspective of at least, and this is assuming that all of the information Elliott has as being correct, which granted Elliott is one of the best there is out there, but if Verbeek is acknowledging that these kids have to play, then this move has to happen. It's that simple. Like either
I don't disagree. I just think you need somewhere to trade him to.
Or one of these kids should get moved, and that's not a great situation. Or the other thing is, and this is the one thing that is not really said too much by a lot of this, because like Elliott mentioning that Verbeek's not sympathetic and looks at it as it has to be hard to get a spot. Those two should be in the lineup over Drew Hellison. Like, the only reason Drew Hellison is in the lineup to me is he's a right-hand shot.
Yeah.
It's not because he's outplayed both of them. And so this is not a situation where they haven't earned that spot. It's a situation of handedness is screwing them over. So the other way that this could work, just play them over Hellison. As much as I do like Drew Hellison and think that he should probably be playing maybe over Radko Gudas in this lineup if all things were equal and it was a merit-based situation, but like both these guys should be playing over him.
What do you think about Tampa Bay for Dumoulin?
Do they have what's their cap space look like?
They are at, so current cap space is 5.5. Projected cap space is 1.3. I think you can squeeze them in there.
Their third pairing left-hand D is Emil Lilleberg.
I think Dumoulin would actually look pretty good there.
I think he'd look good there. I think he'd look good in Toronto.
Yes, but Toronto has less money,
Sure.
and that's. I mean, you and I were chatting before the podcast. Simon Benoit return to Anaheim.
I mean, you get a third team broker to make that work.
That's such crazy. Like that would be the craziest trade for like nothing.
Yeah.
It's too much work. If I'm a GM, I'm looking at it like, no, I don't care to be 2% better if I have to put in like 20 hours of work.
Like this is a
That's why I'm not
situation
a GM.
where you're moving Brian Dumoulin to make your team better in the long run from just removing that logjam, which is what we said after, like, that's what we said, like, at the Trouba trade. You have to move Fowler, and now you also have to move Dumoulin.
Yep.
Like, you have to move two guys now. Like, this has been the whole issue with the Jacob Trouba trade from the damn beginning.
The Dallas Stars have been brought up. They don't have a lot of cap space.
No, they don't.
So that's problematic. Anyway, I just think that Dumoulin probably gets traded because for all the reasons you outlined, for everything we're hearing, but it's the trade itself is going to be funky. It's going to be not something that we fully expect. Like there's just not an obvious fit out there. I think Detroit is actually really interesting, just because they have cap space. They have cap space.
It also would just be hilarious with the jokes that would come around it.
And you also know that when Pat Verbeek goes to, when you have your iPhone, you go to text and you can have contacts at the top. You can just tap their name. Steve Yzerman is number one on there. So the likelihood of a trade with Detroit again is quite high. But so Dumoulin's out there. I mean, realistically, the Ducks are not going to get a lot for him. I mean, maybe a second round pick if you factor in the retention. Like it makes a third go to a second. But the value of trading him is creating the roster space. Outside of that, I mean, Robby Fabbri's hurt right now. He's actually listed on IR, so I don't know. I mean, I guess you could try and trade him, but I don't know what his value is. What are your thoughts on the Fabbri situation?
I mean, it would just be moving him so that like Sam Colangelo could be on the team.
Yeah, but like, do you think he has value around the league?
No,
because he's got a $4 million cap hit.
The Ducks were given a pick to take him.
Yep.
Like, granted, like the cap hit isn't as meaningful now because of accrual on cap space and things like that.
Yeah, but it's still proportional.
Yeah.
Like,
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, not disagreeing there. You'd have to retain on that to get it down to 2, and then, everything like that. So, like, that's one where it's like, all right, like, probably not worth it. He probably should just, like, be scratched, to be honest. But,
well, maybe you get just another pick for him, like a 4th rounder. You get 2 picks out of having him on your team. Because they got one to take him. They can get another one to move him. So this kind of all leads me to this. I think that I just have a gut feeling. It's not based on like any information. It's not based on anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's just me reading the tea leaves, me doing what I do, maybe inserting narratives here and there. Who knows? But I just think that if you look at the mix of this roster this season, clearly like there has been, if you're Pat Verbeek, you're looking at this, you're thinking maybe there's been some improvement. Right, we're in the playoff mix, but it feels like the way that this roster is currently constructed just isn't quite there yet, and it might not be the right mix. And I could see Pat Verbeek making a big swing. Maybe it is trying to get Mikko Rantanen into the fold. And I look at the way that this team has kind of operated in the Trevor Zegras world since Pat Verbeek has become GM, whether it was hardballing him in RFA, whether it's been really kind of going hard at him to change his game, whether it's been not playing him at his natural position. It has just felt over and over and over like the Ducks want Trevor Zegras to fit a certain mold. The Ducks are less interested in Trevor Zegras, just the player. They're more interested in Trevor Zegras on their own terms. And I think that what's come of that, even though Trevor Zegras' two-way game has really improved, and we all know that. Greg Cronin won't stop talking about it. But I think what's come of that is a diminished version of Trevor Zegras, because as much as he's improved without the puck, we care about what Trevor Zegras does with the puck. We want him to have it as much as possible. We want him to make as many plays as possible, make as many highlights, because that's where he's at his best. That's what he was drafted to do. And the way that the Ducks are managing Trevor Zegras, the way that they are playing him, I am just not sure if we're going to get that version of Trevor Zegras back. The high point total Zegras of the first few years. I just don't know if that's the player that they want, to be honest. And so I think that we've reached a point where the Zegras experiment, I'm not saying it has to end, but I don't see a world where the Ducks truly let him be what he can be and really maximize him. And I think that like it just feels like a trade almost makes more sense now to me, because if you just want your team to fit a certain identity, then go and get that identity, go and build it. And Trevor Zegras is a trade chip that allows you to do that. I'm not saying that this is what I would do or that I agree with any of this. Everyone knows how I feel about Trevor Zegras. I think very highly of his game, but the way the Ducks view him is not like that. And I think I just want this awkward dance to end. And I just have this feeling that whether it's this deadline or it's this summer, we're going to see something significant with the way that this roster is made up. I just don't see the Ducks rolling out the same-ish roster next season. Agree or disagree?
I don't know, actually. I don't. So to use our Discord term, yes and no. I think it's a bit of both to me. Because I think that you're spot on there. I think with your analysis of the game of Zegras, I agree 100% with what you're putting out there. Of he's not going to hit the offensive totals that he's had. He's not going to do what he was drafted to do under this current coaching staff. My question ends up being, okay, if there is a new coach, will that extract more out of Trevor Zegras? The other part of this, is this a Pat Verbeek thing? Is this pure, like...
Yeah.
That is the other part of this conversation of, is it Verbeek driving him being on the wing? Because
yes,
Trevor Zegras on the wing is just not as useful as he is at center. And if that is simply Verbeek not viewing him that way, first off, I think that is a complete mismanagement of a player, because that is Pat Verbeek kind of showing his hand there in some ways of his understanding of where the game is at and where it's going and what it takes to be a center in the modern day game, and that he views it simply as a good center is Isaac Lundestrom, I guess. That is how Pat Verbeek, I think, views it. Whereas, no, a good center needs to have the puck on a stick coming up in the offensive zone. Like, there are different types of centers in the league, and there are certain guys that are better at center than at wing. And so if it is a Verbeek thing there that's driving that, then Trevor Zegras is just not going to become who he could become unless there is a full cleaning house and a full regime change within this organization from top to bottom. And
which
so
isn't going to happen anytime soon.
No, for sure. And so removing removing Verbeek, removing Cronin. And so to me, that is first off the question there of, for Zegras to become his best version of himself as a Duck, what has to happen? First, Cronin needs to go, because I don't think Cronin is doing anything to optimize him. And the second question has to be, okay, will a new coach be given the ability to put him in those situations? If the answer is no there, then I think you're spot on. And that Zegras is just not going to become who he can become, and that the Ducks in some ways are better off trading him, not only for his own sake to become who he can become, but also for their own sake of getting someone that fits their system a bit more and will probably bring them more
value.
Bring more value to the roster because of what they're bringing.
This version of Zegras now is not that valuable.
Yeah, and that's such a bummer. And it sucks.
It sucks. Really sucks.
It sucks.
Yes.
It sucks that we're having this conversation, and I hate it. I'm not a fan of it. But there is logic to it. And I think that is the thing that it's a tough pill to swallow as a fan of the team, as a fan of Trevor Zegras, a fan since they drafted him, because now I'm getting in my feels a little bit.
Get
But
in. Get in.
when he was drafted, it felt like this ray of sunshine, this
It felt like a
energetic,
steal.
like this. Not only that, but just like when he started playing, this energetic, fun-loving, high-skilled player, such a new wave type of player that we hadn't seen in the Ducks organization since, like, for all the success of Getzlaf and Perry and the success they brought, and it was great and all that different type of stuff. They played a very specific, hard-nosed style of game that, while Getzlaf was such a highly skilled player, did not play like a get out in the rush type of player. They were a straight cycle team, get in the zone, bully teams, dominate in that manner. We had not seen a free-flowing, high offensive style of player on this team in that mold since probably Paul Kariya. And so I think, as someone who really enjoys that style of hockey, of the offensive game, like, I could take or leave the team having to be hard-nosed. I know that might be controversial to some people.
They
For
won
me,
a Stanley Cup doing that, so you're going to get pushback.
no, 100%, and I know I
Yeah.
will. But I could take it or leave it. I don't care if they play that style or they don't. I think that I personally, if I had a style of hockey that I would prefer, it's one that is creating offensive chances. It's creating up and down looks, all that type of stuff. And like, I think the Florida Panthers with Andrew Burnett come to mind, of a team that was just such an enjoyable brand of hockey to watch.
Yeah, the Devils.
I think the New Jersey Devils are in that same mold with Jack Hughes. And so it felt like the Ducks were trending in that direction. And it feels like there's just been this hard shift in the last couple of years away from that. And I think that Zegras just doesn't fit this hard shift away from that necessarily. And I think that that's just really sad to think about.
It is. And I do think that more and more, the fact that he's still on the wing is more of a Pat Verbeek thing than a Greg Cronin thing. Because Greg Cronin has said that Trevor Zegras is a top line center. Like, I don't know how many coaches in the NHL say a player is a top line center and then never play him at center. That doesn't really make sense. And so I think that it's quite possible that Pat Verbeek said or chimed in at some point, yeah, I think he's more of a winger. And
I mean, he said that last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's
Like,
literally said it. And I think that's probably been reaffirmed this season by Verbeek to Cronin, which is wrong. Trevor Zegras is better at center, like you said. And so, and the flip side of that is that he is, I mean, I hate to say it, but he is so much worse as a wing. In this system, I'm not
He's
saying
less
he can't,
impactful.
he can't. It's not that he can't be good as a wing. It's just the way that the Ducks play and what they ask their wingers to do. He is nowhere near as impactful, and like, we're not getting the full Trevor Zegras experience right now. And like you were alluding to, I don't know when we're going to get it, because Pat Verbeek ain't going anywhere. Greg Cronin's probably getting another season. So at that point, get someone who fits, make it work. Get a true winger, and send Z. So anyway, all this is to say, this has been kind of a long aside, but I think that whether it's this deadline or this summer, I think we're going to see a bigger trade. I think or a bigger move. I think something is going to happen, and it'll be interesting, because I do think that watching this team the last few games, yes, they are showing us really great things in some instances. They're also showing us some really bad things in some instances. Like, this roster still feels slightly incomplete. It still doesn't feel fully compatible with what they're trying to become, and I think a mild facelift is coming, and I don't know what that will look like, but I think that that's what's coming. And maybe that starts with the Gibson trade, where you acquire a roster player. Maybe that starts with making the big swing and going and getting a Mikko Rantanen and with an extension and including a Zegras in there. I don't know what it will be, but I think something's coming. So that's just my gut. Again, I want to reiterate, this is just how I feel, me reading the tea leaves, my own opinion. I don't want this to happen. I don't want Zegras to leave.
So you're not saying that this is a fact with information that, as has been construed on Twitter.com, that you are reporting information here, that there are facts behind this.
I was accused of clickbaiting, of slow news day, of trying to get money out of my tweet. It's just like, I can see how someone would look at my tweet and be like, okay, like, what's causing you to say that? Like, maybe a little ambiguous, but I never said this is like me reporting anything. Also, I don't report anything. I'm not a reporter. I don't have any sources. I don't know. Like people have said that in the comments of like, oh, we don't. Why are you reporting this? Like, I don't. That's not what I do. So anyway, just really want to clarify all of that for the folks out there. Those people are probably not even listening to this podcast, though, for being honest.
Yep. And Chris Wysong in our YouTube chat chimes in saying, Z with a hat trick tomorrow after all this trade talk. I hope so. That'd be so much fun.
I love Trevor Zegras. Like, I am one of his... I can confidently say I'm one of his biggest fans, just purely of his game. And I've been one of his biggest defenders all of these years. I mean, how many debates have we had on this podcast with people online about going back to the Akins days of, why is he getting treated with kid gloves? Why is he getting shifted to the wing? Why this? Like, Trevor Zegras, like, I'm not saying he owes us any money, but we have been doing the lot of work for him in the streets to defend his name. And so, yeah, I don't want to see him get traded, but I do want to see him thrive. I want to see him be who he can be. And I hope that that's with the Ducks because that'd be more fun, but we'll see where that goes.
Yep.
Feelings.
All right.
Feelings are real.
Yep. Let people feel your feels. And here's the thing. It's okay to be bummed if they move him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that the comparison for me, and also this will be a nice little anecdote. How about that? Are you ready for an anecdote?
Let's hear it.
So in 2016, so for those who don't know, but you all probably know by now, I am a Montreal Canadiens fan.
Wait, really?
Well, some people like still don't seem to know that.
I know.
And that was the day. There was a day in the summertime where the Canadiens traded my favorite player, who I owned a jersey of, PK Subban, for Shea Weber. And I was devastated. And I was angry at the team for a long time. And I still think they were wrong to do it. I think that all the reasons underlying it were really wrong, and PK Subban was great for them. But Shea Weber ended up being really, really good and helped lead them to a Stanley Cup final. And so even if a trade happens that you're not happy about, it can still end up working out for the team. And so I would just say, be angry. Don't neglect that emotion, but also keep an open mind to what could be. Right.
Well, and that's the key point here is that I think that that's your reasoning behind coming up with this for everyone out there and thinking that this could be something that's happening is that there just isn't necessarily a fit right now with this organization and how they're going and Trevor Zegras in terms of what he's bringing to this team. And so it could be going that way. I hope that's not the case. I hope not. He's not moved.
But that's just how it feels. Again, this is just like reading tea leaves of just they want to play a certain way. Has any other player on this team been talked about in the way Trevor Zegras has of, oh, he's got to adapt. He's got to change out. Like, they don't say that about anyone else but Zegras. I just find that interesting. So.
Yep. All right. Want to get to questions?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to go to Discord to start. Let's go to patreon.com/crashthepond to get access to our Discord at the $2 tier. Really fun place to talk about the games, talk about everything, talk about the trades with the trade deadline. Great place to be. But we will start with questions from there. So Mr. Kitty Meowface said, let's say Brady Tkachuk, and he's saying that he loved him in the Four Nations. Brady Tkachuk was really, really good in that tournament. Let's say Brady Tkachuk is available. What does Anaheim offer? And do you think he's the captain of this team?
Have you watched the Four Nations Unveiled?
I started watching it and fell asleep halfway through last night.
It's not that great. It's also, I should probably watch it on our Crash the Pond account because it is riddled with ads. But he does strike me as a bit of a leader. Like, he's a younger guy, but he's talking to everybody on the bench, including veteran. Like, he was pumping up Charlie McAvoy on the bench. Like, he kind of seems to have that magnetic personality a little bit. If he was available, I mean, I think the Ducks, you have to make a call. He is a guy who can really help your team.
That is someone where the Ducks have so many young players. I think you say, who do you want?
Yeah, just take your pick, honestly. Yeah. Because he's 25. He's going to be 26. But, you know, a center lineup of him, or sorry, he's a wing, but a top six where you've got Leo Carlson on one line and then him on another line with maybe a Mason McTavish. Hey, both the Brady Tkachuks in the same line. For For those who get that, it was
That took me a minute.
it was Mason McTavish being told to play with Brady Tkachuk, but there's only one Brady Tkachuk, and I mean, you hear all around the league, bigger guys now are like, I got to play like him, and having him on the Ducks, it would actually be really interesting because you talked about the Ducks being a kind of in-your-face physical team in their prime, going back to the Getzlaf era. I mean, Brady Tkachuk would be a return to that.
Yeah, 100%. He would fit that mold.
But he's also skilled. Like, he's not just
Oh, yeah.
a bruiser. Like, he is a very talented player.
I think he's very similar. He's like Ryan Getzlaf as a winger.
Interesting.
Maybe not as much of a playmaker.
Yeah, more of a net front guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he had 37 goals last season. He's got 23 this year. I mean, he's already got multiple 30-plus goal seasons.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I just don't view him as a Corey Perry type. I think his game is very different than Corey Perry.
Corey Perry's also kind of unique.
Yeah.
But I can see some of the similarities, a little bit of that. Would you say Matthew Tkachuk is almost more similar to Perry than Brady Tkachuk?
No, I think Matthew Tkachuk is more skilled, honestly, than Corey Perry.
I mean, Corey Perry was very skilled.
He was. No doubt there. That's not a shot at Corey Perry. I think Matthew Tkachuk.
He never had any between the legs goals, I guess.
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brady Tkachuk, very, very good. Mr. Kitty Meowface also said, did we ever get an update on Artyom Galimov?
Not that I've heard.
Yeah, I haven't either. Blobby Head Person said, if the Ducks trade Zegras, what team do you want him to go to the most?
Oh, well, I'm trying to be realistic about where he could go. Would Ottawa want him in let's just say Brady Tkachuk wants out? Anyway, that would be an interesting spot. I think Carolina would actually be a really good fit for him because they do play that kind of north-south style, but they really need, I think, a playmaker skill guy like Zegras to kind of balance that out. I also think Colorado would be a really great fit for Zegras. Like, if you could plug in Zegras into that 2C spot instead of Middlestat, like, they are a much better team.
Colorado's a good one. I think Montreal's a good one.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on that because I get accused of drumming up this narrative solely to get. I've been accused of drumming up this narrative solely to get Zegras to Montreal, as if I have any clout whatsoever.
Did I bring it up to make that accusation? Maybe. But no, I actually do think that in Montreal that would work really well. I think Martin St. Louis would do a really, really good job.
The Canadians also badly need a second-line center now.
Yeah.
With Kirby Dach out.
I think going and joining up with his friend in New Jersey would be interesting also.
Jack.
I think that New Jersey would really use him in a good way. So, yeah, I think those are some spots I'd want to see.
He'd be a good fit on a lot of teams because he's a great player.
Because he's very, very good. Yeah. And the Ducks, realistically, the best case scenario here is he is not traded. Like, we should add this. He is not traded, and they just play him as he should be played. Like, that is best case here.
Yeah, like the thing with Zegras is that he's not a player who is so good that he can just rise above any circumstance. You do need to play him a certain way. The Ducks can do that. Like, it's right there for the taking. How about this? Ryan Strome gets traded, and Zegras shifts to center on Friday. How about that?
Yep. Let's see. I zoned out slightly there. Sorry. Appa asked us, which team do you want him to go to the least?
I don't really have an opinion there.
Vegas.
I could see Vegas being painful for Ducks fans.
Yes. Rumham said, do you think Pat Verbeek throws a curveball no one saw coming coming ahead of the trade deadline?
I think so. What about a Ryan Strome trade?
I mean, I think it would make a whole lot of sense to trade him. Like, because it would make tons of sense.
If we're talking about fixing log jams, that is a log jam fixer in terms of you get to then shift Zegras back to the center. I don't think they're going to do it because reasons, but yes.
Yep. All right. Let's see. I got caught up with something there. Mitch Brown's beloved said, with both both teams starting to get some wins, who do you think has been the better coach in the Ducks org during their short tenures, Cronin or McIlvaine?
I don't know.
I haven't watched enough goals to have an opinion.
I've watched a few goals games this year, but my opinion is not nearly as fleshed out as on Cronin. So
okay. So pick one. I'm making you pick.
I have to pick one. I'll say McIlvaine, just because watching the goals the few times that I have this season, they do play a very fun style. Like they are a bit more of an exciting team, and I think their power play is actually pretty good. I could be wrong about that, but it looks good. So give me McIlvaine, sure.
Doom Gooser said, to piggyback off Rumham's question, who's your absolute surprise person in the league that gets traded at the deadline?
Surprise person. Erik Karlsson? That's like the trendy one, right?
I don't know if that's a surprise, though, necessarily.
I think so. I mean, that's a lot of money to move mid-season.
You know what? Brady Tkachuk.
Wow. Where does he go, though?
The Rangers.
Why? What?
I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there.
I would hate him on the Rangers. They don't deserve him.
I'm just throwing shit out there.
The Rangers getting Brady Tkachuk would be so, like, it's like their rebuild, their quote-unquote rebuild all over again, where they just fall ass backwards into Panarin and Lafreniere, and they just go on another run. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's get to questions from, I think we got one on Twitter, and then we'll get into the chats. But so Trevor Zegras said, "Hey Jake, looking forward to tuning in the podcast." But said, out of all of the 2026 RFA guys, that's Carlson, Gauthier, Zegras, Zellweger, LaCombe, Minchkov, etc., do you see any of them getting an extension this summer when that period opens up?
I don't think so.
Maybe LaCombe.
I think LaCombe is going to want to wait. That's kind of where I've landed on that. So
yeah. And then another question, who would you, because we haven't really talked about who the Ducks could trade for here, but we talked about more who could go out.
I don't think Rantanen, I mean, that's the name that's come up. Pettersson.
So here's his question. Who would you rather trade for, Alex Tuch or Brock Besser with an extension in place?
Oh, if we're talking about fit, I think Alex Tuch makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they kind of need a player like that, like a power
I think
winger
he would fit
type.
really well.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go with that.
I'm just now looking up his numbers. Yeah, Alex Tuch, I would say, is probably the better one to go with there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then this comes from Blue Sky Random Hockey Thought said, in your opinion, what is the fair evaluation of this Ducks roster based on who they are now and not who they might be? Apart from San Jose and Chicago, can you name 5 teams that have a worse roster than the Ducks right now? I actually think that this Ducks roster is not bad. Like, I think the roster overall is good. I think the way they're being deployed, the style they're playing, it doesn't mesh completely, fully with what they should be doing.
Okay.
So, can you name 5 teams that have a worse roster than the Ducks right now?
Wow. Putting me on the spot as I'm trying to create a blind ranking while you talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. League standings. Okay. Sharks, Blackhawks. Ooh, Seattle?
I would say Seattle, yes.
Pittsburgh?
No, because Crosby.
Islanders?
What would you say about the Sabres?
I think the Sabres are equal.
Okay. So I would say Islanders, yes. Flyers, I would actually say yes also. I think the Ducks have a better roster than the Flyers do. I think the Flyers are getting more from their coaching than they are from their team. Mm-hmm. Here's a fun one. Boston?
No, not yet. If once they trade Brad Marchand, then sure.
I think they are. I mean, I guess now I'm accounting for injuries to McAvoy and Lindholm.
No. Healthy, that they are not better than the Bruins. Let's not.
Calgary?
No. Actually, maybe on Calgary.
Columbus?
No. I think that Columbus is, like, I used to think the Ducks had a better roster than Columbus, but
I think Columbus is coaching. And that's not saying they're bad. Like, I guess I think somewhat highly of this Ducks roster.
I think somewhat highly of Marchenko, Voronkov.
Sure.
Zach Werenski. Like,
sure.
They have great players.
Agreed.
I think you're being a little orange tinted there.
Maybe. It's possible.
But I think I agree with the premise that, like, they have been elevated by great coaching.
Detroit?
Agreed. No. I mean, the thing with Detroit is that they're not good, but they are just like an average NHL team. And honestly, Detroit has some talent.
Agreed.
I don't think they're better than Detroit on paper.
So how many did we say for sure? So
I don't know.
Seattle, we said for sure was worse. The Islanders, we said were worse. The Flyers, we said were worse. What about Nashville?
Are we gonna go over every team, or are we gonna move through
fine.
questions here?
We'll move on. All right, that's it so we'll move on to Twitch. Go to twitch.tv/crashspawn, where if you have Amazon Prime, you can support us over there in a way completely free to you. You can be just like our good friend, that guy Bobski, who resubbed with his Prime membership for 30 months and added the comment, it's def him more than 30 months, LOL.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. And then, or like SJ Hawking. So, check us out over there when we go live. It's a good time in the chat there. Or you can find us at YouTube. Go to youtube.com/crashspawn, where you can subscribe to our channel, like our videos. If we get a little bit of a like spike right now, that'd be real fun. But go check us out over there. So people start throwing your questions in the chat. But Chris Weissong said, question for Felix. Design a win-win trade from the Ducks and your Canadians.
Oh, man. Win-win trade. So can I include Trevor Zegras in this?
Sure.
Okay, Trevor Zegras to Montreal. Actually, you know what would make some sense? Just straight up Zegras for Kirby Dach. Like, assuming Kirby... Because hear me out. This is
I don't think you're wrong in the value, but man,
the thing with Kirby Dach, this is actually what's fascinating about these two players, is that Kirby Dach has been kind of, he's been penned as a second line center, and I don't think he's a center. I actually think he's much, much better on the wing. And Trevor Zegras has been penned as a second line winger, and I think he's much, much better at center. And so I think this is just off the cuff. It's not a complete trade, but I think Dach would actually make a lot of sense just from a fit standpoint. Like he would be a great complement on the wing. In the top six. Hurt? Yeah, he just had a really bad knee injury on the same knee that kept him out last year. So like health is a major concern.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking like fit wise, what would make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. And then P Blaster said, question, how's Seneca doing? His stats in the OHL look good. Is he ready to join the NHL next year?
No clue. I haven't watched a minute of him.
Yep. Haven't really watched too much of him either.
I also just don't really care. Is that bad to say? Like he's a top 3 pick and he's putting up a bunch of points in his draft +1. I'm not moved. I'm sorry. I now I just want to see him play pro hockey. I don't really care up until that point. Sadly.
All right. In our shit show questions, we have some blind ranking requests.
Okay.
That I don't know if you have time to put these together or if you saw them.
What is it?
Blind rank 2000s NFL quarterbacks.
Okay.
And
can you I want to know, can you do that though?
I could.
Okay.
I 100% could. And then that was from our good friend Lou. Blobbyhead Person said blind rank 1980s NBA players.
19. I don't think either of us can do that. So
that one I couldn't do. The 2000s NFL quarterback I could do.
Okay. Well, I have a few. I've created a couple here while you've been talking. So
okay.
I think I'll try to get the quarterbacks one in though while you talk. So continue talking.
Okay. Well, it's time for those blind rankings. So.
Oh, is it? Have we not done chat questions?
We just did.
Oh, damn. I'm really distracted. Sorry, folks.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. You're putting the call for questions in now.
I had earlier. I'm just doing it to see if anything else pops up.
Okay. Sorry.
From people.
I'm very confused right now.
You are very distracted. I also may have done that just to confuse you.
I'm not a good multitasker. I need to be focused on one thing.
So do you have a blind ranking for me?
I do have one.
Okay.
This is going to be a good one. This is one that I think will change things. This will be a historic one.
Oh, let's do this question. Z Hamster said, if not Zegras, what star in the NHL right now do you think fits well into the Cronin/Verbeek system?
Alex Tuck. Oh, we're talking about stars.
Yeah, stars.
Well, I brought him up.
Brady Tkachuk.
Brady Kachuk. I brought him up in the chat, but I've realized that there are problematic reasons that he shouldn't be on the team. But like a player like Val Nichushkin, just like a power winger with skill, would be very beneficial for this team. Like they need an actual winger. Trevor Zegras is not a winger.
Yeah.
It's really problematic for the team to be having a player playing out of position.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
So blind ranking means you have to rank things 1 through 5 without knowing what comes next. Blind rank all-time Anaheim Ducks coaches.
Ooh, okay.
So there are not very many options. So this
Yep.
this will be interesting. Up first, Brian Murray.
I'm gonna go with as a head coach, not as a GM.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what he did as a head coach. So
No, I couldn't either. I'll go with a solid 3.
3. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't hate it. Don't love it, but don't hate it. Mike Babcock. Can you separate the art from the artist here?
I don't think so. I think because of that, I think he has to go 5.
Led them to a Stanley Cup final.
I know. I just think everything surrounding Mike Babcock, everything like if this was a decade ago, he's probably 1 or 2.
He has to be top 3.
Like 1 or 2, but yeah, everything surrounding him like puts him at 5.
Okay. Up next, Pierre Paget.
4?
Any notes?
No, got nothing. No recollection.
All right. Well, you're kind of in a tough spot here because your 1 and 2 are still open.
Yep.
Up next, Guy Chiron.
2, I guess.
So you potentially just screwed yourself, but this kind of shows the Ducks coaching history. Up next, Ron Wilson is your number 1.
That's fine. First head coach. I mean,
didn't he lead them to a playoff berth in their first couple seasons?
Yeah, like that honestly is not a horrible ranking. I got very much the no-name head coaches. Maybe Brian Murray should have been 2.
Do you want to try this again?
Sure. Is this just like a list you have, or do you have it in a randomizer?
I have the list in a randomizer.
Oh wait, Chris Weissong, I want to answer this. Said favorite Ducks team of all time. His is 03 losing to New Jersey and Game 7 wrecked him. I don't think I was as big of a fan back then. I was more so casual. I think during those runs, those teams don't hold special places in my heart, even though I love them and they kind of made me a fan of hockey. But I think for me, the team that I liked the most was maybe 13-14 or 15-16.
Yeah, for me, it's the team from 2014 to 2016.
Specific year though.
15-16.
Over 14-15.
Yeah, because the 15-16 team had more skill. They were deeper. Like they had a lot of nice little pieces on the 3rd and 4th line.
David Perron, like that was a team that I think that was Bruce Boudreau's best year.
They really loaded up that season, getting David Perron, getting Simon Dupre. It just didn't work out with him because of injury, but and then Josh Manson,
he was on that team.
Yeah, I know, but
Dupre was hurt.
Yeah, but 14-15, was Josh Manson on the team yet? I'm forgetting.
In 14-15 he was not. In 15-16 he was.
Yeah, so that was kind of the rise of Josh Manson. So yeah, that's the best team that I think they've had.
Yeah, I think 15-16 is a weird year where they lost in the first round, but that's because they were just riddled with injuries. Like Manson gets hurt in game 1 of the playoffs against Nashville. Raquel had an appendectomy, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Oh, did he?
Or whatever. And then David Perron had a shoulder injury. Like all that team kind of all got hurt. I think 13-14 also, just looking back, was a really fun time. I think Matthew Perreault, Saku Koivu, Teemu's like that was a fun time.
I missed out on those teams. I wasn't really following the team yet. But
yeah, 13-14 was a fun season.
Okay, I have a quiz for you.
Okay.
It's not that hard, but I'm gonna make it harder.
Okay.
Name the top point getter for the 2015-16 Anaheim Ducks, but also guess the number of points.
Okay. 15-16. I think Corey Perry was hurt for some of that season, so I don't believe it's him. I think it was Ryan Getzlaff.
Correct. Also, Corey Perry played 82 games that year.
Okay, well, there went that. Great. Oh, no,
Didn't miss
it was
any games.
Sorry, he was moved to the second line with Ricard Raquel as the second line center.
Corey
That's
Perry
what it was.
hurt his knee a couple of years later. Maybe that's what you're thinking of.
That's maybe what I'm thinking of. I'll go with 75.
63. Damn. They did not. This was not a high octane team, which is kind of hilarious.
Which, honestly, I should have known that because that was the season where they could not buy a goal for the first 10 to 20 games.
Oh, yeah.
And Boudreaux, like, turned them into, like, a defensive, like
Juggernaut.
masterclass. Yeah.
Oh, no. That was 14-15.
Nope, that was 15-16. Because that was 15-16, they started off like with a horrible record.
Remember when they started off with Carl Hagelin on the team, and he had 4 goals in 43 games. Okay, who was the top goal scorer and how many goals?
Top goal scorer and how many goals? I will go with Ricard Raquel.
Okay.
And I'll go with 28.
Wrong and wrong.
Oh, probably over 30.
Ricard Raquel was not the top goal scorer, and he scored 20 goals that season.
Okay.
The top goal scorer was Corey Perry with 34 goals. Damn. So Corey Perry had himself a season that year.
I should have gone with the chalk.
It was just a little moves like getting Brandon Peary. Remember Brandon Peary?
Wasn't Mike Santorelli? Didn't they get
Yuri Sekach,
Jamie McGinn?
Yeah, it was just all those little moves. I just loved all those moves.
Well, Sekach was the year before, but yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't pay off. No, he played only 22 games for the Ducks that year.
No, but he got on the team in 14-15.
Is that true? I think
Ricky
you're right.
Edom Cakes.
Yeah, because they traded Rene Bourque. The fact that he was a Duck is still a bit mystifying.
Yep, and Emerson Edom was traded in that offseason between 14-15 and 15-16 for Carl Hagelin.
I had another blind ranking for you.
Okay.
I think we have time.
We'll do one more, and then we'll get out of here.
This is really simple. Just blind rank NHL teams' jerseys.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be home, like specifically home. It's just their overall look. Up first, Colorado Avalanche. Oof, that's a tough start.
Man, I think I gotta go one. Just out
What?
like, I love that jersey.
I do too, but one is high to start.
Yeah, but
the Canadians are still in play.
Blind rankings have screwed me over in the past, so I'm gonna do what I feel.
I respect it. I respect the full send. Okay. New York Islanders. Ooh.
4.
I was going to say there are 3, but you do you. You do you. All right. Next up, Calgary Flames. You don't like that jersey as much as most people do.
No, I do. I like it.
Okay. Why did I think that? I don't know.
I do. I'm going to go 2. Just to spite you there. I was going to go 3, but now I'm going 2 to spite you.
Are you sure? Do you want to stick to that?
I don't. Wait, do you know what's next or
no?
No,
I don't.
Then let 2.
You're really riding with emotion here.
I am.
Is this the Feelings podcast?
It is.
Okay. Oh, how about this? You can pick any jersey from this team's history.
What does that mean?
Well, because Chris in our chat is saying the original Mighty Duck is the GOAT jersey.
Oh, no. It's their current. No.
That makes it too complicated.
Current home and away.
All right. Up next. Ooh, this is why you screwed up. New York Rangers.
No, I'm actually very content with that being 3.
Under the Calgary Flames.
Maybe I would have Calgary below that, but
it's arguable.
They're very good. Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing with the Rangers jerseys it's good. It's not great.
It's classic.
All
right, who's 5?
Your number 5 is people are gonna be happy about this. The Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah,
I think you would have them 5 regardless.
Yeah, like let's be real here. Me putting Colorado at 1 was the right call.
It paid off for you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I would have this that differently. I think I would have the Rangers 2. I think I don't mind Vegas. Vegas' gold
I don't
jerseys.
mind it.
Yeah, I think I would have Calgary and New York are above. Calgary and Islanders are above Vegas. I think my only difference would really be New York at 2 over Calgary and the Islanders.
Yeah. So, good list.
Next time we're gonna do AHL jerseys. How about that?
Oh, I'm down.
You're gonna have to Google it each time.
That's fine. I'm still down.
Okay. All right. Well, this was a fun one. I'm glad we ended on a fun note because things got dicey at different points. So next time that we talk to you, when will that be? Sunday? Is that the plan?
I think the plan is it Sunday or Monday?
I think we said actually we don't know yet. We're not
Yes.
sure. It depends on what they do.
Current plan is Sunday. Keep an eye on our Twitter feeds. We will put it out there.
Okay. So trade deadline is Friday. We will do a Patreon podcast on Saturday. Is that can we confirm that right now?
Yes.
Okay. So we will do an early podcast for only patrons. So if you want access to that and if you want to join our Patreon community, it's a great way to support the podcast. Go to patreon.com/crashthepond. For $2 a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord server. Great way to connect with us and other diehard Ducks fans. You can up that pledge to $7.50 a month. So on top of the Discord, you get access to 2 bonus podcast episodes. So like for this month, it comes up real handy because we will delay the regular show a little bit so the patrons get early access. And you also get exclusive player breakdown videos. That's at patreon.com/crashthepond. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. We really do appreciate those. And we actually have new reviews this week. I don't know if that's what you're looking up right now.
Yep. Vamping. I'll get there.
Well, I can pull it up. I have access to the internet.
I've got there. So we've got these two. So Francois de Leaf Suck says, good show, 5 stars, best Ducks pod. And then Corange said, education for the...
I think it's Sea Orange, but...
Oh, yeah, Sea Orange makes way more sense.
Corange.
Corange. Education for the uneducated, 5 stars. There are hockey pods where the hosts talk about the games, players, and staff. Then there are hockey pods where they do those things but also teach you about the game. As a lifelong Ducks fan who never really played much hockey growing up, I've become a much more educated fan of both the Ducks organization and hockey in general. I actually look forward to my commute when there's a new CTP. Keep it up, gents.
Appreciate you. That is really kind. And
yes,
that's kind of what we aim to do. Entertain and educate. E&E. E&E. Also, man, this is really a sidetrack, but
oh no,
we did not talk about this at all. But at Ducks practice today, there was a kid line put together of Gauthier, McTavish, Colangelo, which I think is interesting. But I'm curious, what would you nickname that line? I feel like there's a name. Like, how about just like the classic, the law firm of Gauthier, McTavish, and Colangelo?
No,
I like that one.
No.
Gauthier, McTavish, Colangelo, and Associates.
No. I'll
McTavish,
come up with. Let me think on it.
Colangelo, McTavish, Gauthier.
Let's let the line like play for more than a game, where they're actually a line that is being used for multiple games in a row before I think of something. I'll think of something though.
Cut Mac Sam. CMC.
Why did
CMC.
Why did my brain go to cut my life into pieces? This is my last resort.
I don't know. That is something you need to ask yourself. The CMC line, perfect.
Suffocation.
No, don't do that. The CMC line, perfect. Christian McCaffrey. It's excellent. You love Christian McCaffrey, don't you?
I like him.
Well, I was trying to rub
He
it
did
in
burn me.
that you drafted him first
He did
overall.
he did burn me.
And he immediately got hurt. All right. And you can also support us by subscribing on Spotify, on YouTube for the video format of the pod. You can follow us on all social media channels. And with that being said, happy trade deadline, everyone. Happy hockey. Happy life. It's a good day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
For the season.